Good evening to IGELians and to all of their guests. What a great evening. What a beautiful night to be out here, to be in a place that has become to mean so much to the city of Atlanta and to all the people who work here. So I'm Rob Williams. I have the pleasure tonight of moderating this panel up here. First, I'm going to show the results of your psychometric assessments on the screen. And according to most of the spouses and partners I've talked to, you haven't changed a damn bit. So we may have to have IGEL 2 or remediation to have people back in. And I would just like to shout out to Molly Nuttall that this is probably the first time I've been in a meeting with her with a meal that you didn't have to serve it, Molly. So well done. So 20 years. Now I know some of you were just in high school when this program started. Some of you were on your way to retirement and are now back here with us tonight in your redeployment, in your second careers, those kinds of things. So this is a real mix. We thought we'd take a few minutes this evening to at least walk you through the historical timeline of IGEL with the significant people who played a role in the development of this program and who've been part of this program. So seated immediately to my left is Connie Wiggins. When I first met Connie, she was the chair of Governor Roy Barnes' Environmental Advisory Committee. It was to that group that he gave the charge, what are we going to do to keep from going to court over every environmental issue in the state of Georgia? Connie took on that charge, and you'll hear that story of the beginning. Now, seated in the middle, who is representing the middle of the IGEL program, is someone who's actually in a class later than Casey's, but you'll understand why Casey is the future, because she's a heck of a lot younger than Mark Berry is.
That is true. That is true. Better looking, too.
Well, definitely. That's a low bar, Mark. That's a very low bar.
That is true. That is true. That is true.
So Mark, with the Southern Company, came to Georgia, and one of the first things he did was join into the IGEL program. It's been a great part of the IGEL story, and we'll get him to tell that. And then on the far left, I've already sort of given you the punchline, but when IGEL first went to the Cox Farm in southwest Georgia as part of our program, Casey was in high school. And she is now the manager of that farm, that family farm, and is in many ways the future of IGEL. So we're going to get her to talk a little bit about that tonight. So will you join me in welcoming an incredible group to be in this panel? So it's kind of an open-ended question, Connie, but how did IGEL begin?
Well, as Rob already said, we had the Governor's Environmental Advisory Council that was put together in the early 90s to help the Environmental Protection Division in the state look at environmental issues in a different way. And sometime in the late 90s, Wynn Hill, who was with Southwire, who was on the Governor's Advisory Council, and Mac Ballou, that many of you know, who was in the solid waste industry, the three of us were sitting in a bar.
Just like IGEL.
Yes, just like IGEL. How appropriate. And Wynn said, you know, I've been thinking, and I just sort of had this idea that maybe we need an environmental leadership program. And so we started talking a little bit about it, and I'm sure there were some other conversations that had gone on around that. And so, you know, it started bubbling up and more ideas coming to the forefront, and it was really, you know, getting some traction. And the next thing I know, Harold Reheis is saying, okay, we're going to fund this. And Harold, I distinctly remember, it was a chilly Wednesday or Thursday afternoon. We had been at the Sloppy Floyd building. Harold said, we are going to meet with the governor. He put us in a single file line. We marched, Jim Stokes, Gary Cornell, Jim Durrett, and I, Roger Folsom, David Word, several others, marched behind Harold into the governor's office and sat down. And Roy was sitting there rocking in his rocking chair, you know, he knew what was up. And so, you know, we shared our idea, and he said, well, you know, we've got problems in this state. And we've got a lot of diverse opinions. We've got too much legal issues that get involved in things. And y'all need to just go figure it out and go do it. And we were like, yes, sir. We left his office, and that was that.
And we've been joined tonight by some of the original members of that Environmental Advisory Committee, and I wonder if they would stand up and be recognized by this group, the EAC, who really did start this program. So Connie, starting a new program is kind of a, it's so careful what you wish for. And every new idea struggles in the beginning. What do you remember about those first days of putting this program together?
Well, several thoughts come to mind. Some stories I won't tell, but I'll tell you over a drink later. One is that we had funding. And those of you that have ever started a new program, you know how critical funding is. And you spend all your time trying to get the dollars together or get volunteers or whatever. So the funding was in place through the state and the Environmental Protection Division. The second challenge was finding a partner that could work with us. And several of us had been through other leadership programs. We were familiar with the Fanning Institute and the University of Georgia and their work on Leadership Georgia. So we went to Fanning and we found a great partner. There were lots of discussions about what partners meant. And to some of us, a partnership was a two-way opportunity to do things. For some, it was more, sorry, you're the contractor, and we're going to write the checks. We worked through that, and I think y'all will agree that that partnership was critical to where IGEL is today. So, Rob, thank you to you and Gail for helping us get there. A couple of the other challenges were,
Where is Gail Cowie? Stand up, Gail Cowie.
yes, Gail.
Gail was part of this.
One of the other challenges was, you know, when you get a group of leaders together, they all have great ideas. And everybody thought, Mark, you know, like, we're going to have the Southern Company opinion shared. Or we're going to have the farmers' opinion shared. And you're going to come to our area and we're going to do the Chamber of Commerce tour. And we're going to tell you everything you need to know about the environment. You know, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That isn't what this program is about. And so struggling through all that, and Rob has got some great stories about dealing with some of our dear friends, the farmers. Gary's shaking his head, yes, and Jim Stokes and Jim Durrett know as well. But trying to get people to understand this wasn't about telling people what they needed to know. It was getting people together in a safe place to share your awesome perspectives and to talk through things and to figure out a way that we could talk with each other, not at each other. And I think that may have been one of the biggest challenges, was trying to herd all the leaders to agree that we were going to go this route and just trust us. We promise you it's going to work out. And I'm not sure how we did it, but somehow we did.
There was a lot of faith.
Yes, there was a lot of
faith.
faith.
And I think the group, some of who were here tonight that helped found it, their reputations were on the line.
Yes.
And I think when they put their reputations on the line, it did attract that first class. And I'll say a word or two about that first class, because I remember distinctly the Environmental Advisory Committee in one of my planning sessions with them. I said to them, okay, now envision this first class when it's together. Describe to me what they look like. What's their characteristics? What's their dominant sort of career patterns? And they said, well, they'd be sort of on the young side. They'd probably be in their 30s. They'd just be getting started in leadership. And this will be our opportunity to sort of raise them up right. I said, okay, I can do that. I can fool 30-year-olds pretty easily. I can do that.
Hey now.
And the first phone call I got when the announcement was made was from Congressman Lindsey Thomas, who said, I want to be part of this program. And suddenly, we started looking at a list of established leaders. And I think since day one, IGEL has prided itself not on making leaders, but on finding leaders and putting them in that environment.
Exactly.
And if you were in the class of 2002, and you're here tonight, would you stand up, please? The original class of 2002.
I guess I'm honoring
You can. So Connie, you attended every session of that first
For
class.
3 years.
Yeah. What were you looking for? What did you find? What did you think the problems were, the barriers in having a class like this?
Well, first of all, before I answer that, Governor Barnes warned us, because he would check in periodically, and he said, whatever you do, as we were thinking about the name, don't call this program Jelly, because that is a bunch of wimps. You need to call it IGEL, and it needs to be much more forceful and credible. And was like, yes, sir, we got that. So as we got into looking at the class, they were a group of wonderful established leaders.
Right.
And watching them figure out ways to talk with each other when they had been on opposing sides was fascinating to watch that develop. Secondly, that they realized they didn't always have to be the same kind of leader, that they could be different types of leaders depending upon the circumstance. And one of the most critical things to that class was the attitude adjustment after the learning sessions. And a time when people really got together, let their hair down, bonded, built that line of communication and trust. And I think that is one of the strengths that I think still holds true today.
Very much. And with that first class, they were not of like mind.
Oh, no.
And any stories you would tell us of the
Let's-
difficulties of bringing that group together?
Let's see. One was some discussions when, what was the exercise, the commons.
The commons.
And getting people to get through that exercise and forgetting the point of it. It was about winning, not understanding the purpose of the exercise. I can remember some fascinating discussions between Ross King, who was with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, and some of the city people and the headbutting about that. Getting in the room with people from South Georgia and Atlanta, and it's my water, not yours. So at that time, in case y'all have forgotten, the water wars were just on everybody's mind. And it was how many lawyers are we going to pay? How many other people are we going to have to involve? How are we ever going to resolve this? And Lindsey Thomas would always come to the forefront and remind us. He said if we would just use adaptive management. We looked at him like, what in the world are you talking about? He said, we all thought we're going to solve this problem. There's the goal, right, Rick? There's the goal. That's where we're going. Don't talk to me about this over here, Gary. Don't talk to me about this over here. That's where we're going. He said if we had taken into consideration that we needed to veer off the path a couple of times, that we would have solved this problem long before now. And I think that people learned and grew and realized that we had solutions in our hands.
Right.
And it wasn't somebody telling us we're doing it because there's a regulation that we have to do it. They weren't doing it because their organization or boss said they had to do it. They were doing it for the right reasons. And it was just fascinating to watch people come to that realization.
And Connie, in the beginning, this was an environmental advisory group was doing this. We had some legal and financial structure at the Fanning Institute at the University of Georgia, but the organization started to mature. Could you just say a word or two about the first steps to have that organization be independent, sort of running itself?
Well, and as I said earlier, we were very blessed that we had the funding, but we realized, politics change, leaders change, issues change, and that we couldn't count on that forever. So as many of you know, especially if you're involved in nonprofits or setting up organizations, when you have that structure, you have the ability to go get grants, you have the ability for other funding sources, you become more independent, you're not as tied to, political structures, because we didn't want anything in IGEL to be painted with a brush of this is Governor Barnes' program or this is Harold Reheis and EPD's program. It really was to be an independent, neutral entity. And I think the credibility was part of it as well. And so, the fact that we're here today and the strength of IGEL, I think, is really a tribute to you know, the commitment people had to seeing it go from its birth to sort of the next phase and where it is now, where it is a extremely, I think, viable and credible organization.
Yeah, because Connie, even in the beginning, there was the concern that if we took funds from sponsors,
Yes.
from good people who were wanting to that we would be bought out. We would sell ourselves and we'd lose that. And so I'm going to use this as a transition to Mark Berry, who
That's because I'm supposed to give you some money?
yeah, well, you're going to write a check here in just a minute. Mark, you actually came first to IGEL as you came into the Southern Company and the connections of the support of this program. But then you went through the program, became a member of the board, were instrumental in that second phase of the growth and development. And there are a lot of people in this room who played a role. But could you represent them just a little bit? What was it like to come into this organization in its sort of mid-years?
Yeah, for me, my IGEL experience, like you mentioned, I came to Georgia. I came to Georgia from Alabama via North Carolina. And when I was in Alabama, I kind of knew what was going on in the state. I knew the people. You know, I would go places I would know folks. And when I showed up in August of 2015 in Georgia, I didn't really understand the state. The state is so diverse in terms of geography, species, conservation, concepts. I really didn't know, I didn't understand. And my journey began with a conversation with Ronnie Just, who I had known previously. And Ronnie said, have you ever heard of IGEL? And I said, well, what's that? That sounds like a hair grease or something. I don't have any hair.
It's better
Right?
than jelly.
Yeah.
Better than jelly.
So what is it? He told me about it, and you know, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, I don't know how that sounds. And he said, he called Rob. I think he called you,
Yep.
and Ronnie speaks at the Amicalola session around energy, and he invited me up, and I came, and Rob was kind enough to let me sit in the back. And I watched this panel, and they didn't agree on anything. And they were fussing, and I saw the class was very attentive, and this was the 2016 class. And I really enjoyed the discussion. So I'm a researcher, so I like debate, right? And I like trying to find the truth. And what I saw was the passion of the people on the stage. And it wasn't the fact that they didn't agree, it was the fact that they were having a discussion in a positive way, and that the people in the class were actually listening.
Yeah.
And there was this discussion that probably happened, you know, between them. And I was really inspired by that session, just seeing the discussion. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself in. I saw that debate and I was attracted to that. I didn't really understand the lenses and all the things we do in IGEL. And I learned that the next year when I was in the class. So May of 16. But it was just fascinating. And I'm so proud of what we do in this program and what we do as a community, and that this is really important. And when I am at meetings, you know, I don't know everyone here, but you'll be sitting and they'll say, oh, there's an IGELian, there's an IGELian. And so this community is at the table, right? And we have the tools, and it's because of this program.
Yeah.
So Connie, I want to thank you for your leadership in actually creating the program. It has really changed the state and made a huge impact. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you for saying that, Mark. So Mark, your other role and reason up here tonight is as a board member. And I'd like to pause for just a minute and ask anybody out here in the audience who's been a member of the IGEL board at any time, please stand up and be recognized. Members of the IGEL board. Because this was a period, these middle years, these teen years from IGEL, where it struggled. It struggled because the funding had gone away. There were a lot of philosophical issues about how to ask for money, who to ask for money, and should we ask for money. And then there was this idea that IGEL should never be so expensive that it drove out populations or was a barrier to populations that needed to be part of this program. And so this board sort of started to come together in its maturity. Could you say a little bit about the role of the IGEL board in this idea of sustainability and longevity of the program?
So first I want to say is that during my time, it was a working board. So there was a lot of things to do, which I didn't know when I joined the board. But it has been a passion of love, so it's not really an issue. So I just want to say that. I do want to thank
Do I have to write you a check?
No, I'm supposed to write you a check.
That's right.
That's
That's
what we
good.
agreed to. But one thing I want to thank everyone in this room, because every year we have that campaign and we have the competition between classes, and it's for fun, and we compete, and all of us are trying to get to 100%. So I want to thank you for your support of this program. Without the dollars that we raise every year doing that part of what we do, we would not be able to, have Molly and the facilitators, Beth, I know who is here, we wouldn't be able to do this work. Also, many of you go to your corporations or your organizations and get additional support for IGEL. And we are in a very secure financial position now because of the support that you make. So I want you just to take a moment to congratulate yourselves, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of the board.
All right, well done. So obviously boards are at the policy or strategy level. What were some of the major issues for the IGEL board as it was beginning to truly invest in itself to create the organization that it's become?
Well, in my point of view, there are lots of issues, but I just want to talk about two. And the one that and these two are extremely important. The first one I want to bring to your attention is what we have here tonight, which is a community. And because of the many classes that we have had, 20 years, I know we were over 600 people that are part of this community. But I think there's tremendous value left untapped in this community. You just kind of sitting around and watch everyone just kind of talk and gather. And I know part of that is pandemic, but I know being an IGELian that we love a good party. And when there's alcohol, there's always some talking and some fun. But how does IGEL really tap into that value and bring that value to bear on behalf of the state of Georgia? Right now when you graduate and you have your class, then it's kind of up to the class to kind of keep it going. I think some classes are better than others. We kind of collect to our class and we don't really know the other classes. Like this is my first time meeting Connie up here on the stage. And what about our connection? How can we collaborate to move the state of Georgia forward? And as a board, that's one thing that we're struggling with is how do we untap that value? We are much more than a program now. So we started as a program, leadership. We are all leaders. We have been through this experience, but there is tremendous value here. And how do we fundraise? I'm gonna say it again. We may be asking for bigger checks next time, that we can support the staff so that we can come together more to learn about issues, to be better collaborators, to kind of engage in that lens process. Tremendous value, and the board, we're trying to figure out how to unlock that. The second thing I'd like to talk about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would say in my time on the board that we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go. Yeah. And I was trying to think of an analogy, and a marathon kind of came to my mind. I can't figure out if we're at mile 4 or mile 5. Yeah. We've been up a hill, I would say, and we're, I think, catching our breath a little bit, but we got many miles to go, and there's huge payoff at the end of the marathon. So I would say that the board chair, since I've been here, have been very engaged and supportive, but we got a lot of work to do, and we really have to open our minds in how we engage this issue. It's really important that we move this work forward, and all IGELians need to engage in that.
Yeah, and we're currently in a time in what I would call the American experiment of a civil society being challenged in many ways. IGEL was created with this idea of dialogue, and yet it's too bad we don't have a program for a lot of other people to help engage in that sort of conversation. And I know the board has been sort of invested in how it creates that more civil society, but also that more inclusive and diverse society.
Yeah, Rob, it takes intentionality. it takes real focus that you have to notice this is an opportunity, there's value there. Connie, you talked about kind of that is the North Star. Don't tell me about this, don't tell me about that. This is where we're going. And the IGEL model for environment, we need to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion and really look, hey, there it is, and how are we going to get there?
So we've been a long way, and we come now to the present, but also the future. I think it's important for any organization to stop periodically and think about its future. To help us do that, to get started with Casey, I'd like to ask every person who's been a facilitator to the IGEL experiment and has helped change it, inform it, and grow it, and improve it, if all those facilitators would please stand up and be recognized by this group. Then there's a kind of an interesting thing about IGEL, which is in the beginning, sort of Gail and I had to do a lot of thinking, making up and planning. And by the end of the first year, we had 6 or 7 experts who graduated from that class who became part of the presentation the next year. And then more, and then more. So if you're one of those IGELians who's been a presenter at an IGEL session, would you stand up and be recognized? Because you are the program as well. So Casey, you were in high school when we first came to Colquitt County and to Camilla and to sort of get ourselves, Mitchell County, to get ourselves invested. And the graciousness of your dad to let us come to the farm and then involve the farmers down there. And as I said, you were in high school when we first started coming down there. I'm going to really put you on the spot. Where's IGEL headed? What are the things that we need to be concerned about that maybe we haven't tackled yet? So I'll just let you start brainstorming and then pick up from there.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying that, I always like to joke that I kind of grew up with IGEL in a lot of ways. Not only did I start participating in the farm tours in high school, the IGEL class of 2013 was my very first professional presentation that I ever gave. And that really means a lot to me, and really did so much to build my confidence in being here on stage with everyone tonight. I don't think I would have ever been able to do that without having those interactions. So IGEL is very special to me, and I have really high hopes for the future of IGEL. I went into IGEL, I was drawn to it because of all those interesting conversations I had in those years that I was getting to participate, first in high school, then college, then as a young professional. I loved the diversity of people that I would meet and their perspectives that were very different from the agricultural industry I was surrounded by in Southwest Georgia. And I just was so curious to learn from other people and valued those conversations so much. And I think about when we've talked about the past of IGEL and its present. The future is critical, and there are so many issues that we're facing today as a state, as a society, where this IGEL approach of connection and open-minded conversation, transparency, honesty, but civil discourse is just so critical. And Mark, I love what you said about figuring out how we can re-engage with people outside of our own class. I love the class of 2016. We were the greatest of all time. But I also just so value all of the people. I've been in the very fortunate position of getting to know several classes, several of you in this room when you were going through, and that's one of my favorite things about IGEL, and I wish that everyone had that opportunity. So that's something that's really important to me, but then also the future of maintaining the integrity of this organization, creating that safe space for people to have those honest conversations and to create new opportunities to collaborate for the future health of our state.
And to help sort of keep us focused on the future at this particular point, if there are members of the newest class of 2022 present, would you stand up and be recognized?
Woo!
And we do know that within a year they'll be saying they're the greatest class ever. So it'll go on and on. So Casey, let's project ahead. It's 2052. And some of us have gathered back together again in some beautiful spot for the 50th anniversary of IGEL. What do you hope will be the topics that are similar to what we've been talking about this year? What will be different?
What I hope will be similar in that time in 2052 is having this incredible community of people, and hopefully it will be greatly expanded. Maybe we'll fill the entire lawn and we'll have to go to a much bigger venue, and hopefully we'll have an entire generation of IGELians at that point. And so I hope that there will continue to be a trusted group of friends and colleagues that are established leaders, new leaders all across the spectrum in this state, and those decision makers that are affecting everything that we do. That's what I think will be similar, that we'll have those strong connections that we made through this program. I know the issues could be very similar or very different, but where I really hope we've made progress is, alluding to Mark's analogy, I hope that there are several issues like the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some of the not so polite discourse that we've seen in the world. I hope that we'll be towards the end of that marathon, and that we've made significant progress there, and that we are in a very different space than we are right now.
So future is an important part of your thinking right now. Future for IGEL, future for your farm, future for that community, and future for your recent addition. This is your 1 month anniversary. Congratulations to you. And Chris, where are you? Stand up and be recognized. So Chris and Casey were in the same Leadership Georgia class as singles. Now, I don't know that IGEL can make that credit. Maybe that's part of the future vision, too. We'll introduce
That's not why
people.
I went through leadership or IGEL.
So what are the things, though, that you worry about in that future, Casey? You're an optimistic person, you're a positive person, but I want you to put on your kind of pessimistic hat for a minute. What worries you about the future of the environment in the state of Georgia, and maybe as lessons for some of the folks in here or things to think about?
Well, one thing I'll say is that when we think about the future, it's easy to think about it in the very distant future. It's not something that really affects us right now, but what I try to remember is that the decisions that we're making today and what we're doing today is collectively what impacts the future. And what we're doing in the present is the future, essentially. And I think what is probably a huge concern for all of us is the projections of where we are headed environmentally, and the challenges that we have to face that are unprecedented. Even as a farmer, I have seen so many things that no generations before me had ever had to contend with environmentally. Hurricane Michael completely changed my perspective on what is resilience, what is adaptation to what we're doing, and what kind of crisis are we facing in the future. And that has been really difficult to reconcile, and I think that's not only true in farming, I think it's true in every industry. And we absolutely have to take meaningful action. But where I do have hope is that it seems like this next generation is very motivated and has a heart for the environment. And I'm not excluding the people here who obviously have a heart for the environment too, but some of the people who are in leadership positions maybe at different levels of our government, aren't quite as motivated as we're seeing some of this next generation. So I think it will take our collective action now and that heart for the environment, for the future, and that next generation to really push us forward and build solutions. But this is the kind of program that really, and the people in this space are really what give me so much hope for the future. And even though it seems bleak right now, there are brilliant people here who are working on solutions and collaborations and things that I think really will have an impact on the future.
So Connie, they say that when you start a new program, in many ways it's your way of speaking to the future. Mm-hmm. And I would like to recognize that your initial efforts started this, were the very first groundings for this, and I hope this audience will thank you for what you've done in building this program. Mark Berry, good ideas die every day. And it's only the sort of solid contributions. You've come to love this state and adopt this state. You've contributed to this state in the short period of time that you've been here, and you've really contributed to IGEL. So let's thank Mark for what he has done. And Casey, you are the future. And with all the love and appreciation and respect that this group has, your engagement in IGEL, being brought into it as young as you were even when you participated in this program, is their opportunity to speak to the future. So join me in best wishes for Casey as she begins both a new life and what she will do for this state in her future. So thank you for being here. And I'm now going to ask Nick DeLuzio to come up here and have a few comments. We'll just sit a minute because he's just going to be short and then we'll break up. So Nick.
Thanks, Rob. Can you hear me? Good. All right. Richard earlier asked if I wanted to speak at the beginning of the session, and after hearing that, I kind of wish I took him up on that offer. So I'm Nick DeLuzio. I'm class of IGEL 2019. And I also serve as for at least a few more weeks, the chair of the Resource Development Committee. Before you all start groaning and moaning, I promise I'm not asking you for money tonight. So don't worry about that. So we just heard from a great panel, and especially from Casey and Rob, about the future. So it's important tonight that we reflect on the past 20 years, but it's also maybe more important that we look forward to the next. I had 20 years, you used 30, so I'll go with that. So as we look forward and along those lines, back in early 2020, the IGEL Board adopted 4 strategic initiatives. Those initiatives focus on developing additional capacity and programs to support you all, the IGEL network, increasing the number of diverse and qualified applicants for the program, what we just heard about from Mark, to be able to provide scholarships to anyone who demonstrates a need, and actively position and promote IGEL's network across the state. To achieve those initiatives, IGEL launched a capacity building campaign with a goal of securing $500,000 by 2024. Now, despite the challenges of the last 2 years, the maybe not so quiet phase of the campaign has been extremely successful. And I'm really excited to announce that we're very close to reaching that goal. And I have to give credit to Scott Lassiter. He doesn't know I'm doing this, but Scott, where are you? Scott. So Scott has been the mastermind of this campaign and has gotten us to where we are today. He's been ably assisted by Will Wingate, Bob Rollator, and Robert Ramsey. So thank you, Scott. Thank you all for your leadership in getting us to this point. So I know that for everybody here, IGEL has meant a lot to you all. So for me, IGEL has had a huge impact on my life, both personally and professionally. So several of my IGEL classmates from 2019 are here. I'm excited and I'm honored to be able to call all of you all very close friends. Professionally, IGEL has been intertwined in my entire career. So coming out of school in May of grad school in May of 2010 as a retired college football player, not really sure what I was going to do next, Jamie Henderson and Kathy Wurzel, who are here, took a chance on me and hired me at Newfields. Newfields is strongly represented tonight. And, I was fortunate to be able to work with a number of IGELians, both at Newfields, but also as clients. So with support from Billy Hall, I consider a great mentor of mine, and the rest of the Newfields family, I was very lucky to be able to participate in IGEL class of 2019. So now, Newfields might regret this part, but participating in IGEL led to my current role today in leading the Georgia Forestry Foundation. And the great thing is, I know that my story is not alone. I'm certain that every one of you here tonight can share a very similar story. So while I'm not asking you for money tonight, I am going to be, we are going to be asking you for your support in the future to support the capacity building campaign, to get us across that finish line, to position IGEL for our next 30 years of success. It's been a great evening celebrating 20 years, but like you, Casey, I can't wait to see what the next 30 years brings. So thank you all for coming tonight. Dessert is available. More importantly, the bar is open until 9. And again, thank you all for coming. It's been a great evening.
Thank you, Nick. Oh. Sit down. Thank you.